Two afflictions of oblivion and distraction just require uninterrupted daily quiet practice until the heart spontaneously comes to complete rest. If one is not seated in meditation, one will often be distracted without noticing it. When you become aware of it, it is the time to get rid of distraction. Oblivion of which you are aware and oblivion of which you are unaware, are 1,000 miles apart. Oblivion of which you are unaware is real oblivion. Oblivion that you notice is not complete oblivion, because there is still clarity in it. Distraction comes from letting the mind wander about, oblivion comes from a mind that lacks clarity. Distraction is easy to cure, but oblivion is hard to cure. Using the metaphor of illness, one that involves pain or itch can be treated with medicine, but oblivion is a symptom of paralysis, where there is no feeling. Distraction can be counteracted, confusion can be straightened out, but oblivion is a state of darkness and stupidity. Distraction and confusion at least have some direction, but oblivion means that the lower self is in complete control. 13. In distraction there is still some presence left of the higher self, but oblivion is ruled by pure darkness, yin. If you become sleepy when you practice quiet sitting, this is oblivion. Repelling oblivion is simply a matter of tuning the breath. The breath in this case is respiration, not the true breathing. Nevertheless, true breathing can also depend on it. Whenever you sit, you should quiet your mind and purify your energy. How can the mind be made quiet? It is done by using the breath. Let only your heart know the inhalation and exhalation, not your ears. If it is not heard, then the breathing is light, then the mind is clear. If it can be heard, then the breath energy is rough, which means the mind is cloudy. Cloudiness means oblivion, and one becomes sleepy. This is the way nature works. 14. This is the way nature works. Even so, it's important to understand how to focus the mind on breathing. It is focusing without focus. One should maintain a subtle looking and listening. This sentence has a profound meaning. What is looking? It is using the light of the eyes to illuminate the self. The eyes are only looking inward and not outward. Not looking outward yet being alert is inward looking. It is not that there really is such a thing as looking inward. What is hearing? It is using the brightness of the ears to listen to the self. The ears listen inwardly only and do not listen to what is outside. Not listening to what is outside yet being alert is inward listening. It has nothing to do with listening to inner talk. 15. This kind of listening means listening to the sound of silence. This kind of looking means looking at the invisible. When the eyes do not look outside and the ears do not listen outside, they are closed off and have a tendency to race around inside. However, only by inward looking and listening can you prevent being distracted by the outside world and prevent inner racing through which one enters oblivion. This is the united essence and united light of the internal sun and moon. 16. When you sink into oblivion and become sleepy, you should stand up and walk around. When the spirit has become clear, one should sit down again. It is best to sit in the early morning when you have free time, for as long as it takes to burn an incense stick. Afternoon time, when there are many things to do, it's easy to fall into oblivion. Also, there's no need to fix the length of time of meditation. It is only essential to set aside all entanglements and sit quietly for a while. In the course of time you will attain absorption and not become oblivious or sleepy. 5. Errors in turning around the light. 1. Master Lu Dongbin said, even though your practice gradually matures, as there are many pitfalls in front of the cliff of withered trees, so there are many pitfalls in your practice. These pitfalls are recognized only when they are personally experienced. Now is the time to speak about them. 2. My school differs from the Zen school in that it has confirmatory signs for each step of the way. First, I would like to speak of the differences and then of the signs of verification. When you are going to practice this doctrine, first see to it somehow that you don't have much on your mind, so that your mind can be alert and free. Make your energy harmonious and your mind comfortable, then enter into quietude. 3. In this quiet state it is essential to know the mechanism and the aperture. Don't sit inside nothingness or indifference, also called emptiness of indifference. As you let go of the 10,000 entanglements, you become alert and self-possessed. One should not be too concerned about attaining a result. Those who take it too seriously tend to have this problem. This does not mean that one shouldn't be conscientious, but signs of verification will appear between existence and non-existence. One can attain it through focusing without focus. 4. Now awakened, let go and be yourself. Make sure you don't fall victim to the ensnaring world. The ensnaring world is where the 5 kinds of yin demons operate. For example, when one meditates and one state is closer to dry wood and dead ashes, rather than the bright, yang, spring of the great earth. In this way one sinks into the world of yin. The energy is cold there, breathing is rough, and many images of coldness and decay present themselves. If one tarries there long, one enters the world of plants and stones. 5. Nor must a man be led astray by the 10,000 ensnarements. This happens if, after the quiet state has begun, a train of thoughts suddenly appears. You find you cannot get rid of them even if you want to, and you even feel comfortable going along with them. This means the master is enslaved by the servant. If this continues for a long time, you enter the world of form or the world of desire. 6. At best one reincarnates as a human, at worst one reincarnates into the animal realm. For instance, a fox may be able to roam in the mountains enjoying the wind and the moon, the flowers and fruits, and taking his pleasure in coral trees and jeweled grass. But after 300 to 500 years, or at most a couple of thousand years, his reward is over and he is born again into the world of the 6 states of existence. All of these are wrong paths. When a man knows the wrong paths, he can then look for signs of verification. Signs of verification of turning around the light. 1. Master Lu, Dongbin, said, there are many signs of verification. These signs cannot appear if one only works for oneself, one must have a desire to help other people to reach the other shore. One cannot receive these signs if one does not have a high valuation, does not relinquish arrogance and does not practice the teaching. 2. When there is uninterrupted continuity in quietude, a sense of joy appears as if one is intoxicated or freshly bathed. This is a sign that yang energy is harmonious in the whole body, then the golden flower begins to bud. Once the 10,000 flutes are all silent, and the bright moon is in mid-sky, one has the feeling that this great earth is a world of light and brightness. This is a sign that the heart is open and the golden flower is blooming. 3. Furthermore, the whole body feels strong and firm so that it fears neither storm nor frost. Situations that for other people are just commonplace moments, make my vital spirit shine even brighter, when I meet them. This is like a house built of yellow gold with a terrace of white jade. Mortal things in this world become alive again with my one breath of true energy. Red blood becomes milk. The 7-foot-tall physical body is like a pure golden treasure. That is a sign that the golden flower is crystallized. 4. The first stage of verification corresponds to the signs mentioned in the Amitayurjana Sutra, the Contemplation Sutra, which include the setting sun, the great body of water, and the trees in rows. The setting of the sun means that in chaos, non-polarized condition, Wu Qi, the foundation is set up. Highest good is like water, pure and spotless. It is the ruler of the great polarity, Tai Chi, the emperor emerging from the east, the direction of the trigram Jin, thunder. Jin is also symbolized by wood, so the sutra represents it with the image of a row of trees. A 7-fold row of trees represents the light of the 7 apertures. 5. The second stage means setting up the foundation on this. The whole earth becomes a jewel ground of ice crystals, the light gradually solidifies. Therefore a great terrace arises and then the Buddha appears upon it. When the golden essence appears, who is it but the Buddha? For the Buddha is the golden immortal of great awakening. This is a verification of the second stage. 6. Now there are 3 signs of verification that can be tested. The first is that, when one has entered the state of meditation, it is like one's spirit is in a valley. When one hears someone else talking, it is as if one hears it from about half a kilometer away, yet clearly. It sounds like an echo in a valley. One definitely hears it and yet it is not oneself that hears it. This is the state of the spirit in the valley. One can verify this at any time. 7. At times the following can be experienced: in the state of quietness, one's vision becomes hazy, because of too much brightness. It's like opening one's eyes while being in a cloud and one doesn't see one's body anymore. This is called, the empty chamber produces white light. Inside and outside are permeated with light. This is a very favorable sign. 8. The third experience is when in the state of quietness, the energy of the physical body becomes soft and pure like silk or jade. It feels as though one is floating upward and cannot stay sitting. This is the spirit returning to heaven above. Eventually, after a long time, one is able to ascend there. 9. Although these three experiences can be verified now, it is not possible to explain them completely. Each person has his own particular verifications according to his faculties and capacities. This is what the Buddhist text Stopping and Observing calls the emerging manifestations of good roots. Verifying these things is like when drinking water, only oneself knows whether the water is warm or cold. In the same way, one can only rely on oneself to see the truth of these experiences. 10. If you have verified the prenatal energy from your own experience, you gain this energy, and then the elixir, which is also called the real millet pearl, immediately crystallizes. One pill returns, and then another pill, going from vagueness to clarity. There is prenatal energy in every moment, which is called a pill, and there is also the general prenatal energy, which extends from one pill to infinity. One pill has its own power. Above all, it relies on a strong will. 7. The living method of turning around the light. 1. Master Lu Dongbin said, "When you follow the teaching of turning around the light, a man doesn't need to give up his ordinary occupation in doing it. The ancients said, deal with things that come up, see through things that rise. If one is mindful when handling one's affairs, the light is not scattered by things, but turns around naturally. This is a formless way of turning around the light, which works. Moreover, there is also the true method of turning around the light." 2. When dealing with things, if one can turn one's own light inward upon oneself, from moment to moment without any attachment to oneself or other people, this is turning the light around wherever you are. This is the best use. 3. In the early morning, it is best if one can rid oneself of all attachments and sit quietly for a few hours. If one uses the method of turning one's own light inward upon oneself during one's daily activities, and this can be continued without any interruption, then after 2 or 3 months, the immortals in heaven will surely come to attest to your experience. 8. A secret spell for freedom. 1. Master Lu Dongbin said, Taoist immortals have left behind a secret spell for freedom. Through 4 Chinese characters the spirit crystallizes in the original cavity. In the 6th month white snow is suddenly seen to fly. At the 3rd watch the sun's disk is radiant. In water blows the wind of Shun, wind. Traveling in heaven, one returns to earth. And absorbs the virtue of Kun, earth. And the still deeper secret of the secret. The land that is nowhere, that is the true home. 2. The poem above expresses all the mysteries. The essence of the Great Way is expressed in the 4 Chinese characters: action through non-action. Only non-action prevents a man from becoming entangled in forms and images. Only action through non-action prevents a man from sinking into indifferent emptiness and dead nothingness. The work of action through non-action is just focusing around the center. The essential mechanism of action through non-action is in the 2 eyes. The 2 eyes are like the handle of the Big Dipper, which manages creation and operates yin and yang. 3. From beginning to end, the great medicine depends on one thing: the metal in the midst of the water, that is, the lead in the water region. Before, we spoke of the turning the light around, indicating thereby the initial mechanism to control the inside from outside. This is to aid one in obtaining the master. It is for pupils in the beginning stages. They go through the 2 lower transitions in order to gain the upper one. Now as things gradually become clear and one becomes familiar with the mechanism, heaven no longer withholds the way, but reveals the ultimate truth. Disciples, cherish it, cherish it. More effort, more effort. 4. Turning the light around is a general term. The further the work advances, the more the golden flower blooms, and the subtler the method of turning around the light becomes. Previously one controlled the inside from the outside, now one abides in the center and controls the outside. Before, the assistant administered for the master, now its service is under command of the master. The situation is now reversed. 5. Before you enter quietude, first tune and concentrate body and mind, so that you are quite free and at peace, letting go of the 10,000 entanglements, so that nothing whatsoever hangs on your mind, and the heavenly heart takes its rightful place in this center. Then lower the lids of the two eyes as if you received a holy edict, like a minister summoned to appear before the emperor. Who would dare disobey? 6. Then with both eyes one illumines the palace of Kan, water. Wherever the golden flower goes, true yang comes forth in response. The trigram Li, fire, is yang outside and yin inside, its origin is the creative, heaven. Yin enters the creative and becomes master. The result is that the heart is aroused by things, is directed outward, and is tossed about on the stream. 7. When one turns around the light inward upon one's self, the mind, is not aroused by things, yin energy is arrested and the golden flower radiates, which is pure yang energy. Things of a kind attract each other. Thus the yang energy of the trigram Kan, water, leaps upward. Then it is no longer the yang energy of Kan but the yang energy of the trigram the creative, heaven, responding to the yang energy of the creative. As soon as these two substances meet each other, they unite inseparably, they intermingle and move quickly, to and fro, up and down. In one's inner temple there is an immeasurable emptiness. The whole body feels wondrously light and buoyant. This is the state, which is called clouds fill the 1,000 mountains. 8. Then the movement becomes traceless, rising and falling become imperceptible. The channels are stilled, energy stops, this is true intercourse. This is the state, which is called the moon pervades the 10,000 waters. When the heavenly heart suddenly begins to move in the midst of the darkness, this is the return of yang energy. This is living midnight. However, this must be explained in detail. 9. When a person looks at or listens to something, their eyes and ears pursue things and get stirred up, only to stop when things are gone. This activity and rest are all subjects, but the heavenly ruler becomes their slave. This is living with demons. But now if you make yourself live with a human being in all activity and rest, this human being is the heavenly ruler, who is a real human being. If when he moves, one moves with him, then the movement is the heavenly root. When he rests, one rests with him, this rest is the moon cavern. Even when he alternates movement and rest for no clear reason, just go along with him. When he rises and falls, rise and fall with him. That is what is called leisurely going to and fro between the root of heaven and the moon cavern. 10. When one moves before the right time, while the heavenly heart remains still, one moves prematurely. When one moves after the heavenly heart has moved, one moves too late. Once the heavenly heart is stirring, one must immediately raise the true intent to the palace of the creative. Thus the light of the Spirit sees the summit. This is acting in accordance with time. The heavenly heart rises to the summit of the creative, it floats upward of its own accord. Then suddenly it becomes silent, and one should quickly use the true intent to guide the heavenly heart into the yellow court, as the eyes behold the central yellow dwelling place of the Spirit. 11. When the heavenly heart is silent, not a single thought arises, when looking inward, one suddenly forgets that one is looking. At that time body and mind are in a state of great freedom. All the 10,000 entanglements have vanished without trace. Then one no longer knows where the furnace and cauldron in the dwelling place of the Spirit are. One can't even find one's own body. This is the time when heaven enters earth and all wonders return to the root. This is the crystallized spirit going into the original cavity. 12. At the beginning stage of turning around the light, the scattered mind becomes collected, the 6 senses are not active. This is called nurturing the root source, adding fuel to continue life. When it is collected, one feels light and free and without any support of effort. This is called the spirit sitting quietly in the ancestral aperture, taking possession of the primordial. Then all shadows and sounds disappear and one is firmly established in great quietude. This is taking refuge within the original cavity, where all that is miraculous returns to its roots. There are 3 stages in all, which can also be seen as 9 stages. This is a later development. For now I will speak of 3 stages in one. During the nurturing and initial quieting, collecting is also nurturing, and taking refuge is also nurturing. At the end, nurturing is also taking refuge. The stage in between can be figured out by analogy. Don't distinguish different points of the body, they will distinguish themselves. This is the formless aperture where 1,000 and 10,000 places are one place. Don't distinguish time, past or future, time will manifest itself. This is being out of time when all units of time become like one moment. 13. As long as the mind has not attained absolute tranquility, it cannot move itself. If it moves anyway, it is false movement, which is not movement by itself. Therefore, it is said, if, when stimulated by external things, one moves, it is human desire. If, when not stimulated by external things, one moves, it is the true movement of heaven. Do not mistake the false movement of heaven for heaven itself. Because it still comes from desire. 14. Desires are based upon external things, which are thoughts that are out of place, and these thoughts move from one to the other. When not a single thought arises, then true awareness is born. This is true intent. When in great quietness the celestial mechanism suddenly moves, is that not movement without thought? This is what is meant by action through non-action. 15. The first 2 lines of the poem at the beginning of this chapter, refer entirely to the activity of the golden flower. The next 2 lines refer to the interchange of sun and moon. The 6th month stands for the trigram Li, fire. The white snow flying, is the true yin within Li about to return to Kun, earth. The 3rd watch is water in Kan, water. The sun is the single yang in the center of Kan, about to shine and return to the creative. Herein lies, the operation of spiritual alchemy known as, taking from Kan, water, to fill in Li, fire. The next 2 lines explain the function of the dipper handle, the whole mechanism of rising and descending. Does not in the water refer to Kan, water. The eyes, as the breeze of Shun, wind, shine into the chamber of Kan and beckon the vitality of dominant Yang. That is what these lines mean. In heaven means the house of the creative. Traveling and returning, one absorbs the virtue of Kun, earth. This shows how the spirit penetrates the energy, how heaven penetrates the earth. This is nurturing the fire. 16. Finally, the 2 last lines point to the deepest secret, which cannot be dispensed with from the beginning to the end. This is the washing of the heart and the purification of the thoughts, this is bathing. The learning of sages begins with knowing where to rest and ends with resting at the highest excellence. It begins in the infinite and returns to the infinite. In Buddhism, not attaching one's identity to anything is considered the essential teaching. The whole work of completing life and essence in Taoism lies in the expression to bring about emptiness. In short, the 3 teachings are not beyond one saying, which is that a spiritual pill enables one to pass from death to life. What is the spiritual pill? It just means to be not attached to one's heart in all situations. The deepest secret in Taoism is bathing. Thus the whole practice described in this book does not go beyond the words making the heart empty, that's all. This single statement can save decades of seeking. 17. If you do not understand how 3 stages are included in one, I will use the Buddhist teaching of contemplating emptiness, illusion, and the sinner as a metaphor. Emptiness is the first of the 3 contemplations. All things are looked upon as empty. Next is illusion. Though you know that things are empty, the 10,000 things are not destroyed, but one attends to one's affairs in the midst of the emptiness. But though one does not destroy the 10,000 things, neither does one cling to them, this is contemplation of the sinner. While practicing contemplation of the empty, one also knows that one cannot destroy the 10,000 things, and still one does not notice them, This includes all three contemplations. Since the skill resides in the realization of emptiness, when one cultivates it, one knows that emptiness is empty, illusion is also empty, and the center is empty too. In practicing contemplation of illusion, the skill is attained in action, so while illusion is of course illusion, emptiness is also illusion and the center is illusion too. One stage of practicing contemplation of the center, is contemplating emptiness. Instead of calling it emptiness, you call it center. When practicing contemplation of illusion, instead of calling it illusion, you call it center. When practicing contemplation of the center, you also call it center. 18. I sometimes speak only of Li, fire, other times in addition to Li, fire, I also speak of Kan, water. Although I use different words, the meaning is still the same. In the beginning, section 2, I mentioned that the essential mechanism is all in the two eyes. The essential point of the mechanism is using it, you use it to manage creation. This does not mean that only the two eyes are used for creation, all the 6 senses and 7 orifices are storage for light, so how could we use only the two eyes and leave out the rest? 19. To use the yang of Kan, water, you use the light of Li, fire, to illumine and absorb yang, then it becomes clear. Sun and moon are originally one thing. The darkness in the sun is the vitality of the true moon, the moon cavern is not on the moon but on the sun. That is why it is called the moon cavern, for otherwise it would be enough just to say the moon. The white of the moon is the light of the true sun. The sunlight being on the moon is what is called the root of heaven. Otherwise it would be enough just to say heaven. When the sun and moon are separated, they are but half, only when they come together do they form a whole. This is like a single man or a single woman, who cannot form a family if they live separate, only when they are husband and wife, we can speak of a family. 20. But it is hard to symbolize the way using things of the world. If a man and a woman are separated, they are still individuals, but if the sun and moon are separated, they do not form a complete whole. What I am saying just brings out the point of communion, so I do not see duality. You just cling to the separation, so you see only one point of view instead of the whole. 21. 9. Setting up the foundation in 100 days. 1. The scripture of the Mind Seal says, restore the ancient habits, and chaos will be brought into harmony, 100 days and the work will be achieved. In general, setting up the foundation requires 100 days before you have real light. You students are still working with the light of the eyes, not the fire of spirit, not the fire of essence or the torch of wisdom. When you have turned the light around for 100 days, vital energy will naturally be sufficient for true yang to rise spontaneously, so true fire naturally exists in water. If you carry on the practice this way, you will naturally achieve intercourse and formation of the embryo. You are then in the heaven of unknowing, and the child thus develops. If you entertain any conceptual view at all, you will immediately enter a misleading path. 2. 100 days of setting up the foundation does not literally mean 100 days, 1 day of setting up the foundation does not mean 1 day. 1 breath of setting up the foundation does not refer to respiration. The Chinese character for true breath, is made up of the characters for self, and heart. The self, and the heart, sustaining it, is the true breath, which also refers to the original spirit, original energy, and original vitality. Rising and descending, parting and joining, all arise from the heart, being and non-being, emptiness and fullness, are all related to thoughts. The one true breath requires a lifetime to maintain, not only 100 days, so 100 days is also one true breath. 3. 100 days is just a way to show how important the engagement of the true breath is. Engaging the true breath during the daytime, you benefit from it at night. Engaging the true breath at night, you benefit from it during the day. 100 days of setting up the foundation is a teaching from the gods. The sayings of the immortals all correspond to the human body and the sayings of real teachers correspond to students. This is the mystery of mysteries, which is inexplicable, you will know it when you see your essence. Therefore, students must seek the teaching of a true teacher. Everything that emerges naturally from the teacher's essence proves effective, 10. The light of essence and the light of discriminating awareness. 1. If you are able to perform the correct technique, the method of turning around the light works whether you are walking, standing, sitting, or reclining. Previously I quoted the saying, "The empty chamber produces white." Isn't light white? There is an explanation of this. For one who hasn't seen the light, this saying serves as a guidepost. If one has seen the light and later searches for white light with intent, then one falls into discriminating awareness, which is not the light of essence. 2. The Chinese character for thought is made up of the characters for now and mind. So a thought is what is present in one's awareness, heart. This awareness, heart, is light and can also be medicine. Whenever people look at things and perceive them without discriminating, this is the light of essence. It is like a mirror reflecting without intending to do so. A moment later, it becomes the light of discriminating awareness. A mirror is not a mirror if it still contains the previous image. If there is discriminating awareness in light, then what kind of light is that? 3. My fellow students, originally you have the light of essence. When this turns into thought, then it becomes discriminating awareness. Then the light is obscured and cannot be found. It is not that there is no light, but that the light has become discriminating awareness. This is what is meant by the saying of the Yellow Emperor, "When sound moves, it does not produce sound, it produces echoes." 4. The introduction of a manual on how to understand the Shurangama Sutra says, "Neither in objects, dust, nor in discriminating awareness, only pay attention to the senses." What does this mean? Objects, dust, are external things, or the so-called material world. This has no actual connection with us. If you pursue objects, you are mistaking things for yourself. Things must have an attribution. Transmission of light is attributable to doors and windows, light is attributable to the sun and moon. If one takes them for oneself, in the end you'll find out it's not you. As for that which cannot be attributed to anything, what else is it but yourself? 5. Light is attributable to the sun and moon. However, the awareness of the light of the sun and moon cannot be attributed to anything. Sometimes there is no sun or moon in the sky, but there is never an absence of the awareness that sees the sun and moon. If the awareness was absent, then how could that which discriminates the sun and moon be considered one's own? When both light and darkness are forgotten, I do not know where the discrimination is, that discriminates light and darkness. Therefore there is still attribution, this is internal dust. Only the real awareness of seeing cannot be attributed to anything. But when one sees with discriminating awareness, this is not the right awareness, then this seeing also has an attribution, which refers back to the discriminating awareness of the wandering consciousness, alluded to in the Shurangama scripture where it says, "Ananda, what makes your consciousness wander are your mind and eyes." 6. When one first begins to study the awareness of seeing through the 8 attributions, one understands that the first 7 can be attributed to something. Not being able to understand the awareness of seeing yet, the practitioner uses it as a crutch. But ultimately, as long as the awareness of seeing still carries the 8 consciousnesses with it, it can still attribute it. Only when this last point is broken through, does one reach real awareness of seeing, which cannot be attributed anymore. 7. When turning the light around, it is the primary unattributable light that needs to be turned around, so that not a single discriminating thought is applied. What causes you to flow and wander is just the 6 roots, sense organs, but what enables you to attain enlightenment is also just the 6 roots, sense organs. But the fact that dust, internal and external stimuli, and discriminating awareness are not used at all, means that rather than using the roots, sense organs, one uses the awareness of seeing in the roots, sense organs. 8. Now if you turn the light around without falling into discriminating awareness, you are using the original essence in the roots, sense organs. Herein lies the hair's breadth distinction: using one's mind as the light of discriminating awareness, let go, and it is then the light of essence. A hair's breadth's difference in the beginning leads to 1,000 miles difference later, so discernment is necessary. If discriminating awareness is not interrupted, the spirit does not come alive. If the mind is not emptied, the elixir does not crystallize. When the mind is clean, that is the elixir; when the mind is empty, that is the medicine. When the mind doesn't stick to anything at all, it is said that the mind is clean; when it doesn't keep anything in it, it is said that the mind is empty. If emptiness is seen as empty, emptiness is still not empty. When one is empty and one pays no attention to emptiness, this is called true emptiness. 11. The intercourse of Kan, water, and Li, fire. 1. Whenever the energy of the vital spirit leaks out, or the vital spirit moves and mixes with things, that is all Li, fire. Whenever you gather back the spirit's consciousness, quiet it down and hold it in the center, that is all Kan, water. When the 7 apertures, eyes, ears, nostrils and mouth, run outward, that is Li, fire. When the 7 apertures turn around inward, that is Kan, water. 2. The yin, inside the fire trigram, follows the stimulation of the senses, while the yang, inside the water trigram, reverses this and withdraws from the senses themselves. 3. Water and fire are yin and yang are essence and life are body and mind are spirit and energy. Once you withdraw to rest your vital spirit and are not affected by internal and external stimuli, then this is true intercourse, as when you sit in profound silence. 12. The heavenly cycle. 1. In relation to the heavenly cycle, energy is not the main thing, the secret is in the heart. All popular methods of practicing the heavenly cycle are like trying to help the shoots grow by pulling them upward. The heavenly cycle is maintained without minding, carried out without deliberate intention. Look up at the sky, it is always changing through the 365 days, yet the polar star never moves. Our heart is also like this: mind is the pole, energy is the myriad stars revolving around it. The energy in our limbs and throughout our whole body is basically a network, so do not exert your strength to the full on it. Refine the conscious spirit, remove arbitrary views, and then after that medicine will develop. 2. This medicine is not material, it is the light of essence, which is none other than the primordial true energy. It always appears after great concentration. There is no method of gathering the primordial true energy; those who speak of gathering are quite mistaken. When you have experienced this primordial energy for a long time, eventually one's heart is filled with light. When the heart is empty, and all indulgence is ended, you are liberated from the ocean of dust. Talking about dragon and tiger today or water and fire tomorrow, are all illusions in the end. The spells I learned from my teacher How Long are as I explained. I don't know about the teachings of other Taoist sutras. 3. There is a cycle in each day, there is a cycle in each hour, where Kan, water, and Li, fire, interact. There is a cycle. This interaction is like the revolving of heaven. As long as you are unable to stop the operation of the mind in the moment, as a consequence there are times of interaction and times of non-interaction. Yet the revolving of heaven never stops for a moment. If you are actually able to unite yin and yang in tranquility, the whole earth is yang, positive, and harmonious. When your central chamber is in the right place, all things simultaneously expand to fulfillment. This is the method of bathing spoken of in alchemical classics. What is it if not the great cycle? 4. The firing process of the cycles differs in scale, but ultimately there is no way to distinguish great and small firing. When you reach the point where practice is fluent, you do not know what Kan, water, and Li, fire, are, what heaven and earth are, what is interaction, what is one cycle or two cycles, or where to find any distinction between great and small. It is all the operation of one body; though it appears to be most great, it is also small. Each time it takes a turn, the universe and the 10,000 things take a turn with it. It is in the inch too, but it is also most great. 5. The firing process of the gold elixir should ultimately become natural. If it is not natural, then heaven and earth will revert on their own to heaven and earth, the 10,000 things will go back to the 10,000 things, no matter how hard you try to unite them, you cannot. Then it is like a season of drought, when yin and yang are not in harmony. Even though Qian, heaven, and Kun, earth, Go through their cycles every day. In the end you will see a lot that is artificial. If you can operate yin and yang, turning them into similar things, then naturally all at once clouds will form and rain will fall, the plants and trees are refreshed and the mountain rivers flow freely. Even if there is something offensive, you can drop it all at once. This is the great heavenly cycle. 6. Students ask about living midnight. This is very subtle. If you insist on defining it as true midnight, that would seem to be sticking to forms, but if you do not focus on forms and do not point out true midnight, by what means can the living midnight be known? Once you know living midnight, there is definitely also true midnight. Are they one or two, not true or not alive? It all requires you to see the real. Once you see the real, everything is true, everything is alive. If your seeing is not real, what is living, what is true? As for living midnight, when you see it at all times, finally you reach true midnight, your mood is clear and light, and living midnight gradually blooms into ever greater awareness. At present, people do not yet clearly know the living, just test it out when you head for the true, and the true will appear, while the living will be sublime. 13. A song to inspire the world. 1. Because of the eagerness of my heart to liberate the world, I sincerely spoke a lot. Buddha also pointed directly to life and death to show what is most valuable. Lao Tzu also suggested that all trouble comes from the lower self, and transmitted the teaching of the valley spirit, but people could not recognize it. 2. Now I will give a general explanation of the road of finding the truth. The pervasive principle of the yellow middle conveys the great changes of yin and yang. When one establishes the right state, that is the mysterious pass. You stabilize your breathing at midnight, noon, and in between. The light returns to the primal opening, 10,000 spirits become calm. The medicine produced from the river source is the one breath emerging. It passes through a veil and transforms into golden light, the single disk of the red sun incessantly shines with brilliance. Common people mistake the vitalities Kan, water, and Li, fire, conveying them between the heart and the kidneys, producing separation. How can the human way meet the heavenly heart? If in accord with the celestial, the way is naturally met. Let go of the 10,000 attachments, so nothing comes to mind. This is the true infinity of the primordial. The great void is silent, signs are gone, at the pass of essence and life, you forget discriminating consciousness. After discriminating consciousness is forgotten, you see basic reality. The water clarifying pearl appears, mysterious and unfathomable. Endless afflictions disappear all at once. The jade capital sends down a 9 dragons decree, walking in the sky, you arrive at the gateway of heaven, controlling wind and lightning, you make the thunder rumble. Focusing the spirit and steadying breath are for beginners, retreating to hide in secrecy is eternal calm. 3. 2 poems, which I used when I initiated Zhang Zenu long ago, both contain the Great Way. After midnight and before noon doesn't refer to the time, but to Kan, water, and Li, fire. Settling the breath means returning to the root and the yellow middle with each breath. Sitting means that the mind is unmoved. The mid-spine where the ribs join does not refer to vertebrae, it is the great road directly, through to the jade capital. As for the double pass, this is difficult to put into words. Thunder in the earth rumbles, setting in motion rain on the mountain means the arising of true energy. The yellow sprouts emerging from the ground refer to the growth of the true medicine. These 2 little verses express everything you need to practice the Great Way. If you understand this, you will not be confused by others. For in old times Confucius and his student Yanhui climbed Tai Mountain and looked out over the Wu area, Jiangsu province. Yanhui was fascinated by the view of a white horse running in the faraway distance. Confucius suddenly put his hand in front of Yanhui's eyes to block his view, so that spiritual energy would not leak out of Yanhui's eyes. How could one not turn around the light? 5. Turning the light around is a matter of single-minded practice, just use the true breath to stabilize awareness in the central chamber. After a long time working with this you will naturally commune with the spirit and attain transmutation. Quieting the mind and stabilizing energy is the basis. When the mind is forgotten and the energy congeals, this is a sign of effectiveness. The emptiness of the mind and quietness of breath is the formation of the elixir. The unification of mind and energy is incubation.